Just finished this thing up. This mirror is from 1952. We stole out of his sister's house. See how I whistle like that, dude? What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Clark Youngblood. Hope everyone had a good holiday. I took an extended break from editing, and but I've been busy. Oh my goodness! So I have mapped out a plan to frame in a mirror with some live edge material and some more of this red oak. Lots of red oak from the same tree, same log, same sawmill have gone into this same house. Live edge can be super fun to deal with, but super challenging. I just ran everything through a planer, and I didn't want to bore you with like 10 minutes of running it through the planer. I didn't join anything. I did not use a joiner here. So everything just came out of the planer smooth enough, flat enough. I just knock off the rough, weathered look. And then, of course, I finish sand it when I'm done. You know, the tools I'm going to use for this build are the track saw, the miter saw, the jigsaw, the biscuit joiner, the thickness planer, 6-inch Bosch palm sander, a variety of just a couple of other hand tools. You know, this material is about little over 2 inches thick, and so I can cut it, you know, numerous passes with a track saw, but I definitely had to finish it up with a jigsaw with a longer wood cutting blade.
This is better than awesome.
I know.
There's some time alone with it.
Dude, what is that? What is that? This is a shelf. I just don't like that. Big hole. My buddy I'm making this for, he's like, do you have to fill it? Every time you go to clean it off, stuff's gonna get stuck down there. I just don't like it. Oh, that just looks like a wee knot, but trust me, it's like the Grand Canyon in there. It's all sorts of in there, comes out here. Just filling it with epoxy is easy enough in theory, but trust me, it's all gonna run out here. I go to trick 60% of the time. It works every time. Epoxy doesn't need much, just needs a little gravity, and that's it. But how do you tape this? I can't. So what I'm gonna do is just mix a little bit of this pigment powder into this wood filler. I mean, do I care that it's the perfect color? No, it's just for my buddy. He's just, I mean, really wanted some lumber holding a mirror. So let's just try to make this filler dark. Looks like it's taken pretty good. What an idiot. I've got to introduce a different color. I need a little bit of brown. I need a Leatherman for this. I've never seen this color in my life. And it seems to be pretty much the same consistency as when I started, as far as like smooth, like frosting like consistency. I don't think this is a bad path to take. We should probably bring in a sophisticated tool like the Leatherman. That's not bad. It might actually just be perfect. It might be exactly what I needed. That's the thing, when you're doing epoxy, it'll find some hole and you're like, I had no idea there was anything there. And it'll just pour out of there and you're like, oh my God, I gotta mix up another batch. All right, so tape is not gonna stick to something that's not flat-ish. I know a lot of guys that do this all day, every day. They spend hours pulling stuff out of these crevices. I don't spend too much time pulling this stuff out. Generally speaking, this I don't do. Hardly ever. If it didn't fall off by the time I machined this, sanded it, and messed around with it, the epoxy will hold it in place. The epoxy will hold playing cards, nickels, freaking coins. So how important is it to get in there like a dentist? To me, it hasn't been very important at all. What is important is when I fill this up, I don't want it falling all over the floor. I wanted to fill that void nice and flat. And that's really all I'm trying to do, but...
I don't know what that is. What is it?
It's a bugler for my elk. That way...
Are you serious? As a tooth?
Yeah. Every morning when you look in the mirror, you're like, oh, I gotta brush my tooth. Oh, I know, dude. I love
I can't
it.
believe you sacrificed that.
Bro, I've been carrying it around since 2009.
I got my dad's in the safe.
Yeah. It's been a couple hours. Just going to take some of these little hair crack voids. So now I'm going to put this super duper tape on there for house wrap. Man, this stuff is sticky. I think it kind of gets in the nooks and crannies a little bit better than if I were to use like regular masking tape. If it doesn't hold it all in, we'll just celebrate a cute little mess. I haven't come up with anything to fill that void yet. I've been using this for just some small projects. Component A and component B are mixed equally. I'm gonna mix the crap out of it. And now I'm gonna pour it off into the second jug. I'll just add a little bit of black so it's semi-transparent. I scrape the sides as I'm mixing it. So maybe, just maybe, my little filler trick worked. It's going somewhere though, because look, that is, can you see? It's dimpled down a little bit. We got a dimple down thing happening here. Let's pour some more. And you know what? I do like the color. It's pretty okay. That doesn't look too bad. It doesn't look like it's coming out anywhere. Are you guys thinking what I'm thinking? Since we have 142 extra grams of this, let's just add a little bit to this knot too. And I can see light through this crack. I poured about way too much material on those voids, but that's okay. I'm over it. You can tell that all of that material is finding voids in there because it's definitely, it was pretty embossed before, and now it's definitely sunk down in there. Because all in this is 50 grams of space at least. I don't know what 50 grams of space is, but it's a space that'll accept 50 grams of epoxy. This worked out pretty well. My wood filler here, that seemed to work out pretty well. This needed to be sanded anyway. That plan worked really good, actually. Where I did screw up is I should have babysat this a little bit. When I saw this, the next day, I tried to put a heat gun to it, and no bueno. I want to see if I can't put something in there. I have an idea for this, but I'm not sure it's going to work. The idea that I have, oh my gosh, it's so risky. I have an object that's in my life that I obtained one time when I was elk hunting. I brought home a 6x6 elk out of the Bridger National Forest, close to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. What are the teeth in the back that are ivory? Anyway, I still have them. What do you do with a tooth or two that you have? I could dig this out enough so that it would fit in here. Maybe this is a good place to put it. Maybe it's a horrible place to put it. I think I'm going to go for it. I should be doing something like this for my dad. If it wasn't for him, that elk trip would have never happened. It's in my top 3 most wonderful things I've ever done in my life. It was an experience I will never forget. This elk tooth should go into something special. I know my buddy just wanted me to throw a live edge mirror frame together for him. Maybe this takes it up to a little different level, and I'm not really sure what to make about that, but I think that's what I'm going to do. Let's go find that tooth. I did have a trip out to Wyoming. There's just a few things that I have left from that trip, most of which are just memories. And boy, are they good ones. There's a huge horse named Panda. That's the elk that I took out. It was a pretty special time. Even before daylight, I had that thing down. Day 1, hour 1. One of the last things I have left happened to be that molar. It seems fitting, but around here, we're wood butchers. So I'm going to make it fit. Make a wee outline. If you look closely, it's actually not far off from fitting. It just needs to go deeper. So I'm going to make a wee outline with this Sharpie. I want it to look natural as possible. Like most things, I've never done this before. I'm always doing something that I've never done before. As we try to get to that feeling of accomplishment as soon as possible. So we rush through stuff. Guilty. At least we'll have this video to see this thing. It's been in my, you know that drawer that you have in your room? It's gonna have a resting place right there. Ooh, lots of bubbles. But I have my trusty heat gun. Look at that. Awesome, lots of bubbles though. Look at how white that is, like creamy. And you'd be surprised. You know, I thought that like how thin that stream is, those bubbles still exist in the thinnest amount of stream there. Man, if I screw this up, it'll be an epic screw up. I will lose something that's here on Earth, and it's the only one in existence. It's the only one that I have. There's so many ways you can screw up a project. We're probably getting ready to screw this one up. A lot of bubbles. You can no longer see that molar, that bugler, it's gone. I hope I didn't just make a huge mistake. It is definitely time to get out the heat gun. I super glued that thing in. You gotta pry it out. You gotta have your gloves on. It's still wet. Calm down. Don't freak out yet. It's gonna be a while before that epoxy cures. Look at it. It looks like the state of Michigan. See, I live like in that area. While I'm trying to fix this, I am super glad to have some brand new jugs here. These should be nice and warm. You know, it helps to have more than just one hobby. I'm into RC stuff. So in my RC kit, an array of things meant to pull things out, a bunch of different tweezers. So you guys can see. It's probably going to come in really handy. Yes. All right. So what are we going to do? Need to hold this in something. Yahtzee. All right, let's let that drip off. Now we're gonna be in trouble with all of this crappy mix. I wanna get that shit out of there. You dare use a rag? Well, we're learning a lot today. If this straw will pull that out of there, maybe that'll pull the epoxy out of here. Seems like trouble. I guess I just don't want that there to be some weird contamination. It's working. And all that material is going up is literally sucking that off at the bottom. That may have been the smartest thing I've ever done. All right, one thing's for sure. We're gonna need another bottle of Simple Green. I kind of feel like we just avoided danger. All right, so those are nice and warm. We got the bugler over there and the box via. All right, let's go to, instead of 41, let's try to go to 30. 11, 14, 16, 21, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 30, 32. All right, so let's go to 66. On a smaller batch, you want to be deadly accurate, I think, because mixing a big batch of epoxy, if you were off by a gram or two, not that big of a deal. But a small batch of epoxy, you want to be spot on. You want to be spot on like Scott on. All right, let's mix this for a couple minutes. Way less bubbles. Still a little creamy, but that's normal. The idea of having those those tweezers, those small flexible tweezers. I'm so glad I had those. They're flexible, so they're kind of spring-loaded. So I cut a little slot into that cardboard, and I let that cardboard hold those tweezers in a spring-like fashion that it had tension on them. The cardboard created tension onto the tweezers in a way that it would hold it. It's holding that molar because I wanted all of that old epoxy off of there. And quite a bit came off. Really try to make sure that I pull every bit off of the sides of the secondary mixing cup. So, still have that in place. I don't want to drop this. That would be a mess. I'm hanging on extra tight to this piece. Just get a little excess epoxy off of there. All right, I'm going to set this back into place like a surgeon of sawdust. My old friend Chad and I used to joke about this being the shop of learned woodworkers. There's something underneath that molar. And I bet you it's the old super glue. So, luckily for us, we have some tools to remove that. I don't want that thing underneath there. Okay, pull that out. I knew there was something down there. I do not want that rising above flush. All right, there we go. Whatever I pulled out of there, there's a little chunky monkey of super glue. I don't want that in there. I'm going to try to clean these off because I don't want epoxy on these. Oh my God, I'm getting epoxy all over them. Oh, that sucks. All right, maybe I'll get back at this later. Wipe off that residue. These are so cool to have. I got these at a RC shop somewhere online. Super handy. And again, it's good to have a couple of different hobbies, like the RC hobby that I have, because you end up with little gadgets, little tools. These were better than these needle nose pliers, which may have damaged that molar. Quit screwing around with that. Let's pour this in. God, I just want to get in there with like a toothpick and see if I can't pop those bubbles. Maybe I get these tweezers back involved. All this is really white right here. I don't like that. There's nothing I can do about that now, though. Can you pop the bubbles with like a sharp object? Don't like that white right there either. Whoa, that was a big bubble. Does seem to be popping some bubbles. I'm sure there's epoxy guys, if they were to watch this, they'd be like, dude, you're so stupid. Huh. I really don't like that white right there. Yikes. Do I now take, you know what I'm thinking, and you and I both know it's a mistake, but do I take a little bit of this, mix it up into this epoxy, and see if I can't strategically place it in and around those spots that are white? Is it going to turn all of that to black? How much of this am I going to add? Better mix that up. God, I can't imagine anyone that knows. I mean, there's guys that just do epoxy stuff all day, every single day. I can't imagine them watching me do this and thinking, wow, that guy's pretty good. I really don't feel like I know what I'm doing here. I can't imagine any of them adding a dye to epoxy after they've had clear in there. But you know what? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. That's what my mom always said. Who votes that we swap out our gloves again? All right, that's what I think. Got plenty of gloves and plenty of tools to get epoxy all over. This is gonna be a mistake. No, let's just figure this out. Actually, I don't mind that. It's slowly spreading down. Gravity is helping it find its way down into that white area. Okay. Meanwhile, as I drip black epoxy everywhere, I don't mind this little technique, this last minute little save. I'll be damned. I'm going to put it in there. In your face, professional epoxy guys. That's a little much. I just want to help it a little bit more get down onto that white area, just to kind of dilute that bright white area. I did not want that in there. Okay, I think that'll work. I'm talking like I'm a scientist. I'm not. I'm just assuming what's happening the molecules of that epoxy are moving. There's plenty of bubbles there. I know that the majority of them are going to pop. So long as they're popping, that is moving. So that black dye is going to be traveling, hopefully not too far. I just don't want it to cast a shadow across that molar bugler tooth thing. So I want to approach this heating part a little cautiously. You can use it like a hair dryer and kind of direct it a little bit. Where that cleared it up quite a bit. I don't really mind that. You can't really see where I painted that in there. That doesn't bug me. There's still bubbles there. Well, there's one. But they're still, it's still moving. It's still moving. But as those bubbles pop, it becomes more and more clear. So at this point, what I got to do is just relax, take your time, slow down, and babysit this thing. This is what I call babysitting the finish. I've done it thousands of times. And when you babysit the finish, it turns out better. Sometimes a finish, be it polyurethane, just a hand-applied stuff from Minwax or whatever it is, sometimes it just needs you to react when it's time to react. If you get a drip somewhere, if you're there to kind of watch it, you can maybe just flatten it out a little bit. But if you are just gallivanting off into the abyss, with your mouth open, breathing in and out, then that drip is just going to form, and there's nothing you can do about it after it dries except grind it down, and, nobody likes how that looks. So I'm going to babysit this finish a little bit. Just every couple minutes, see if I can't get some of those bubbles out. Yeah, see, they're popping. Oh, a lot. Wow, I actually really like what I'm seeing here. It's just about crystal clear. I did not expect to see that much success with adding that black dye, but lo and behold, look at us. Now, the main thing is I got to make sure that as the bubbles pop, oh shit, one thing I didn't consider. No. As the bubbles pop, that's going to flatten out. It's going to shrink down. So I may have to go back over it with another coat. If that's the case, I don't have to sand it to apply another coat. I know that I have 72 hours where I can recoat it and put another blob on there, and it'll be clear. It'll be clear. Okay. If I wait longer than that, then I have to sand it. And I'm not crazy about sanding in all the intricacies of all of this, because I just saw what happened. And that epoxy, the new epoxy, just laid on top of the color that it was when I ground it all down with a drill bit and that little $3 wannabe a grinder thing. I do have a little bit of that dye kind of creeping up there. And unless I come up with a super duper idea, I don't think there's a thing I can do about it. Do you see that? There's like a little ring around here that's kind of... The only thing I can really think of is to try to push it away from that tooth. Not that big of a deal. It almost seems to get closer. It's like a magnet. Oh, there we go. Now it's kind of pushing away. That's why you babysit the finish. Right there. That's why you got to babysit the finish. Because if I walked away, that cloud would have gone over there. And if I'd walked away, and there's nothing I can do about it except tell my buddy I tried, which, that may be the case. Still a cool tooth in there behind a cool story. Everybody that brushes their teeth at my buddy's house is going to go, dude, what is that in there? He's going to go, it's an elk bugler pulled from an elk from Bridger National Forest over by Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And when I say babysit it, right, I'm not talking about just watching it for, keeping my eyes peeled for the next 10 hours. But this initial part right here, these first few minutes, pretty critical. Let's try this again. I don't like right here where there's ridges and they're white, they're like light colored. This worked out really well to kind of camouflage how white that was. But since that did work, I'm going to go in with some pre-dyed black epoxy like I did before. And I'm just going to add a little bit. Hopefully I don't mess it all up. I think this works out pretty good. You can do little touch-ups like that. During the babysitting portion of this, I'm able to add a a little bit of black dye. Here I'm using these tweezers and I'm trying to keep them from separating. I'm adding just a minuscule amount of black dye, which is totally fine. In fact, I think it's a little easier since things have things have cured a little bit. You know, just maybe 20, 30 minutes have passed. And this epoxy is still, you know, liquid enough, but it's not as fluid. So I'm able to kind of go back in and do some touch-ups. I don't mind doing that. That's pretty easy. I don't know about the guys that do this all day, every day, what they would have to say about this technique, but it certainly is saving the day here. I mean, everything's fine. This is turning out clear enough. I thought there was like bubbles on the side, and what it is, it's like the ridge of where my drill bit and chisel had hit and kind of scored the epoxy, so it was like white, and that I didn't like. So this I do like. This I like a lot. These tweezers have come in real handy. I'm going to venture to say that this is one of my favorite tools for epoxy. Keep that in mind, because I was able to make a lot of these little white edges disappear. And you can still see, you see that? Let's see if we can get a nice view of that. You can still see some wood stuff happening in here. It's pretty clear. There are some bubbles around there. I'm going to take the heat gun and just see how many of those I can eliminate. Probably not all of them, because that's what you can expect with epoxy, I think, most times. Let's see how many I can get rid of. Okay. Of course, I'm going to ask for a little bit more out of this, because I kind of like this trick. I was watching this other YouTuber guy, one of my very, very favorites. His first name is Scott also. And he runs the Essential Craftsman channel. And I just adore this guy. And he's a storyteller too. And he was telling a story about a friend of his that was setting an opal and in this ring. And he just wanted to polish it a little bit more. And he had the ring all set up to accept that size opal and that opal only. And he just went in for a little bit more polish, and he cracked the opal. So he had to start over. This is one of those situations where you just got to know, just take it within reason. I'm not a jeweler. This isn't mass production. This is a one of a kind. There may be flaws. You try to minimize them wherever you can as you get older and wiser, and you learn new tricks and you try to implement all of them. And when you're faced with a challenge or a problem, you'll have those at your disposal. But you can also take it too far. And I've done that so many times where I had a piece of artwork and I thought, I'm just going to take it a little bit further. And I ended up ruining what I was working on if I just left it alone. So I'm going to try not to crack an opal. I'm going to use that saying. I just watched that video from Essential Craftsman the other day, and what a great way to put it. You know, it's an important lesson for any artisan, because you can take things too far. When it was fine enough, you wanted to just bring it into this beyond perfect, and you end up ruining it. I'm not going to ruin this. All right. I am somewhat happy with this. Actually, I'm really happy with it. I'm really happy with these. These, for that little trick, that little technique, these are godsend. Now, I don't want this out in my shop, so I'm going to take it inside where no one's going to mess with it. You're not going to mess with this, are you, babe? Don't get any dough from these cookies in the epoxy, okay? Do not hit me with that.
Go away.
I'm not a jewelry maker. I'm a wood butcher. I'll have a 3/8 of an inch air gap behind the back of the mirror, because the back of the mirror touches this surface right here.
All right.
So I was able to use a good panhead screw. So what's happening with this mirror is right there is a 1/4 inch gap. So the mirror is going to go up in there and sit down in this 1/8 of an inch gap. There are just so many details I've left out of this video, but I was like, I just don't want it to go beyond an hour. Because I don't know, people are funny. I've seen videos that are like 6 hours long. I'm like, I don't want to watch that. It's probably a really good video too. And I'm like 6 hours long. An hour-long video is still quite a bit longer than I think most people want to dedicate their time to. But there's a lot of lessons in here, but I've left just an enormous amount of stuff out of here. So what I'm doing here is a little bit tricky. Well, I mean, for me anyway. I had to create a place for the mirror to ultimately rest on, so I had like a nice positive back, but I also had to make it so the mirror would slide into a slot at the top that was deep enough so it could like rise all the way up and then just rest down, not quite coming down that much. So once it was in there, you know, you can remove the mirror, but it's not coming out of there too easy, like on its own, or, you know, the house settling, or, you know, vibrations. And I wanted it removable, but not like on its own, like it would just waltz off into the sink area. So it's a little you know, table saw fun here, where I actually have to use the stack dado head cutter and create, that's the top slot, and this next scene is the bottom slot. So as I'm pushing up, I don't want it to pop off. So just for a little added insurance, I'm just going to throw a screw there and a screw here. And this will help like a little bit of the stability.
I mean, this says can always work. That's in place?
Yeah.
That's what holds a quarter, half inch, or a
Eighth inch at the bottom,
and an eighth inch?
and an eighth of an inch at the top.
I'd say it's genius, but I don't want to give you any credit.
Yeah, no.
Awesome. Tell me I didn't pick the right piece of mirror.
Yeah. And you know, this mirror was no joke. It actually was from 1952. I forget where it was made, but it was really heavy. And you know, the etching was just beautiful and just fit his house perfectly. I hate to say it, but I think we nailed it again. Get out of here, you filthy animal. Dude, that looks piss. We're back to the underside of this shelf. So to kind of recap, what we did here is we put wood filler in all of the cracks and crevices. Then I put the house wrap tape over top of this. You know, we did the tried and true trick of putting an elk molar encapsulated into that knot hole. I'm like, why is that? Wait, what is gray here? We mixed up some black pigment into the white putty, and that's how this got gray, which is fine. And then we put the tape over it and then filled this with epoxy. And then, you know, there was that whole rigmarole. And it worked out like $1 million. And just so you know, check this out. So with a little bit of the spare stuff, you know, we kind of poured a little bit on these cracks. When I say we, I mean me. You guys were just watching, you know, breathing in and out. So it went from, you know, here, obviously, you know, I mean, it's not a huge mystery how it got to that point. But, you know, just to give you an idea, it definitely does travel pretty easily. So that trick worked pretty good. And this is the underside of the shelf. This is the upper side of the shelf. Anyone that really needs to get a good look, you know, from this angle to see what we did here really needs to have their head examined. And then, you know, you just take their head and just smack it right in there. Just maybe help along, you know. Does it bug you guys that is, you know, bright white and we're going to seal that in with finish? It doesn't bother me that this is gray. That white's right there, and I'm not crazy about it. I don't know why, it just drives me, it doesn't drive me crazy. I'm just gonna kind of go through with this super duper sophisticated marten tail fur from Mozambique. Super technical, very creative. Put the old man clamp on there. Ooh, yeah, that's awesome. All right, let's put you into a different view. You guys want to go? You guys want to get high? All right, this is the only time I will suggest that you guys get high. Let's see if we can't grind that flat. That's weird. There's electrical clippings, like little wires and stuff.
Huh?
Yeah, don't worry, I'll clean them up.
I cut wires, yeah. What's wrong with your light?
It's got epilepsy. Holy macaroni and cheese. You see this? Dude, that was...
Only spot that you had to sand?
Yeah, I ground through, I went, bink, I went, oh shit! So I had to stop and I had to collaborate and listen.
Badass, just the right amount of bark.
You know, what I did with this bark is I just took a wire wheel, chucked it up in a drill, and that's how I normally deal with the edges. I spend maybe an hour messing around with the bark, the edges, and then I move on.
Almost like you know what you're doing.
I wouldn't go that far.
I'm not. I said almost.
You know, this is my approach to dressing up these edges. Obviously, just taking a wire wheel. To me, it's the quickest way. I go through and I just kind of take off some of the, you know, stuff that just wants to fall off. I let it fall off, and I think it's more than acceptable. It turns out nice, and it happens pretty quickly. This is a scene out of, oh my gosh.
There's only one thing missing.
The shelf, an oak shelf. Yeah, that'll be years before that
This one
grows.
doesn't rock.
Yeah, it will. I'll put one in there that rocks. We did some hot 40 grit action. In this shop, we go through sandpaper. Oh my God. This actually is my favorite sander now. I was a pneumatic man most of my career with a Dynabrade, you know. Then I got this thing, and you try to take it out of my hands and I'll punch you in the lip. But man, I've gone through some sandpaper and I'm reduced to this. All of my heavy grit, I can still kind of use it. You know, like that 40 grit was probably 80 grit because it was so just beat down. We do have a problem. In sanding, you know, that molar that's in there, I burned through the epoxy into that. The more I grind down to that, the bigger that circle's going to get. Whoa. I've got to leave it alone. There's nothing I can do about it. You know, I mean, what are you going to do? If anything, it draws your eye to it. And you're like, is that a elk tooth in there? No one's ever going to say that. I mean, this is between me and him. And for years, we're going to joke that I screwed up his mirror. Trust me. I was afraid that this would happen. And I'm glad that I didn't, you know, just kind of like, duh, like Ray Charles. Like, oh, I'm not paying attention. I was. And just like that, it popped up. So when I put a layer of finish on here, that may make it kind of dissipate too. So we'll find out. Anyway, we're going to keep an eye on it. We're going to mix up all this stuff. And I'm gonna show you how I do that. I got the mixing cups and some acetone, which I use not part of the finish. It's just a cleanup. But that is essential for finishing. You've got to know how to clean up your gun. And I'll show you how Bruce taught me how to do this, how to clean up. It is the best trick that I've come across.
That was easy. You said that was going to be hard.
That's funny. I couldn't be happier with the results. It's so cool. You're going to get some residue, you know, some finish, some drippity drip. I got that much finish in there. And the reason why you want to make sure that you clean that up, you don't want dust to stick to it. How much am I putting in there? I don't know. I use my dope, data based on previous engagements. Just natural. I think I'll need about that much, and I stop pouring. Let's turn this sucker on. Let's weigh a cup. 40? Huh, that's weird. I thought when I got these cups off the shelf at Home Depot that they were a little bit different. I know that cup always weighs 34 grams. I'm going to zero that baby out, and I know 278, 277. This should be enough to spray everything that I have. Once I mix that up, I believe I can spray everything that I have twice. I might be a little bit light, and I don't want to be light. We're at 387. 387 times 1.5 equals 580. That's a lot. I may have made a mistake there. I think I'm mixing up way too much. That's all right, because I want to go a little bit heavy. Let's mix this up. All right, we're going to go to 580. This isn't like epoxy. You can be a little off, like Grandma at Thanksgiving when she's had too many glasses of champagne. All right, maybe not that far off. Okay, 180 or 583 is where I ended. That's okay. No big deal. Even if that was epoxy, I think we'd still be in the safe zone. Though there's in come the trolls. It has to be exact. The sending to Afghanistan. Start over. 583 times 1.3 equals. We're going to 757. I know that's way too much. Oh my word. All right, you don't have to mix this thinner. I don't know why. Let's go to 757. All right, no less than 30%. If you go over a couple grams, not a big deal. We're gonna mix this up pretty darn good. You know what I didn't buy is lids. I don't plan on having too many. I mean, these were $2 a piece. I think they are at least 25% more expensive than the ones I get on Amazon. I can feel this. It was pretty stiff when I first started mixing it, and now it's nice and whoo, look at that. Nice and thin. And I just pay attention to, you know, little indicators like that, you know, like I pull the stick out and, you know, on my pull-out game, and it's, I can tell right away that things are pretty normal, and it's just pouring right through there. If you guys remember that video with the red door, the door fiasco, it would not pour through there. I can't tell you how happy that makes me, because this is good quality finish. All right. Oh my God. Obviously a respirator. There's no, this isn't a dust mask type of scenario. This is full on respirator. I'm going to, I don't have a protective case for this camera. And so I gotta put it away. Spraying this on is, you know, there's oodles of videos out there on, you know, like the distance you want to be. The closest portion that I'm going to finish, I finish that stuff first, then I gradually come back to here. I'm going to do my edges first, then I'll start with the field here, and I'll gradually come back to here, leaving the closest stuff, the wettest stuff, and that way the overspray is landing in the wet, so it becomes part of the liquid, okay? That's really important. I didn't know that until a couple years ago. And since then, I've had some improvements. Love that. That's really, actually, it's very important. So if you're to do it in reverse, we're gonna start back here. Everything that I'm doing is causing overspray, and it's kind of landing back here, and it's gonna be more crunchy comedina. And then I'm just constantly throwing like almost grit back here. So if all that grit that is technically finished overspray is landing into the wet, it dissolves into the wet and it becomes part of the finish. Does that make sense? Hope so. Anyway, that's the order of things. And let's move on to, let's spray this stuff. Oh, one last thing. 99% of the time, I will start everything in reverse. And you got to think of things in reverse. This is the back side of this mirror frame. And when I super soak this and I turn it over, I'm going to have my handprints in this. I can't avoid it. I could have made some, you know, I can hang it from the ceiling. There's lots of things that I could have and probably should have done, but it's okay. I'm going to have some handprints on the back side of this to some extent. When I flip it over, I'm going to then, this will be landing on these sawhorses, and there's going to be a couple of lines where it's sitting in fresh finish. Oh my God, that's not good at all. But if it were to sit and wet finish on these sawhorses, not a big deal, because then I would be putting the money side of this up in the air and focusing on that and not flipping it over onto its face. Does that make sense? So that's kind of like how there's an order to things. Like, you know, you can't poop before you take your pants down, end up with a big mess. You know, there's always an order to things. Which is really funny because I did this video out of order. And I noticed that, but I went ahead and did it anyway because it's just funny. But you know, it really doesn't matter that I did the finished part before I did the fabrication part for this video. Somewhere along the line, I'm starting to learn that people want to see things out of order. Like you want to see what it was done last first. Four miters that come together, and these came together pretty nicely. I just had like a little messing around to do in like two corners, but they came together. It was almost like a damn unicorn how they came together so nicely. So I got lucky there. Maybe it was some skill that was part of the layout. But I'm doing these miters. The miters turned out pretty cool. It's really tough to do a full, you know, surround with. And that's why I'm a woodworker, carpenter guy, because I'll never be a singer. Anyway, these came together pretty darn nice. How I put them together was 2 rows of biscuits, one stacked on top of the next row. So it was, I think there were like 4 biscuit joints per miter, and obviously it traveled well, nothing cracked. It was you know, really solid joint. Pretty simple to do. You just do your top row first, and then you adjust your plate so that the machine runs the second row lower, and do that after your first row. And then you just go around, clean everything up, because you don't want any debris underneath the pieces as you're doing with glue up. So I like to take a little, like a lid from a jar and put like 3/8 of an inch of wood glue in it. And then I dip my biscuit in that little puddle. And then, you know, Rockler sells these little silicone paint brushes that are meant for wood glue because wood glue doesn't stick to it. And I don't use them very often, but I tell you what, and this is a perfect setup to use that. So I just carry around that little lid, dip my biscuits in the gravy, and next thing you know, we're starting to put stuff together. I liked using an 1/8 inch roundover bit, you know, just to soften some edges. I wanted a little bigger roundover than just knocking the edge off with a block sander. But sometimes I do use a wee block sander. Now I'm going to show you here in a second. What I do is I take a block of wood and I take like a Scotch-Brite pad, and I wrap that Scotch-Brite pad with sandpaper. Staple it to the top, screw it to the top. Sometimes it's sticky enough, you know, if you use like the pressure sensitive stuff. Or you know, you can just hold it in your hand. But that's a pretty decent round over, you know, to kind of soften edges. But on the inside edge, I thought I'd use an 1/8 inch round over bit. It's actually I have a router that I rarely take the bits out of that one. I just leave the 1/8 inch round over in there because I use it so often. So one of the few times I actually use my screw gun on this project, I'm just running a couple 1/8 inch pre-drills, and I fasten that shelf using some really good 3-inch long cabinet screws. I think I put 5 screws in that shelf, so it's not going anywhere. Watch out for the scale. I'm surprised it didn't run away when it saw you. I just put a second coat on. This is my wait 30 minutes and put another coat on of the sanding sealer. That's this process. So I didn't sand in between these coats. It was just boom, shakalaka, boom. That's it. Let it sit for the night. Stick around for another minute, okay? You know what? We didn't need near that amount. If you can see, look inside there. Plenty left. And I actually went around another time and put more on. More on? All right. So I have a clean out bucket here that has semi-fresh acetone in it. That's where I had my gun parts in earlier. They were soaking. I'm going to use that again. In what I mixed up before, that's where the excess finish is going to go to never be used ever again. I'm going to let that sit overnight. It'll be like a silicone breast implant tomorrow morning. All right, then I'm going to take my acetone and I'm going to put maybe 2 inches worth in there. Not quite that much. Maybe an inch. Okay. I'm going to take my gun, hold the lid on without the hose on, open it back up, and that silicone breast implant jug, pour that right in here. Okay. Then I'm going to add more acetone, a little bit more this time, I suppose. Maybe 1.5 inches worth at the bottom. Remember to put the lid on the can so it doesn't evaporate all night. I'm going to shake it up again. All right, then I'm going to let it piss in this can. All right. Actually, wrong can. It's going to be a lot of finish mixed with that. And though it's not important that it's totally clean, that first initial bucket that I had the tips in there, leave it as clean as possible. So see how that's coming out? Oh, and it just got stronger. The flow just got a little stronger. Then I'm going to brush this. The tip intact and everything. Brush it while I have the trigger pulled. I just do that until it stops pissing out. That is really between coats, that's what you do. Kind of start over. But that's the next thing you do if you're going to leave it overnight is pop the top. Okay, throw that in the first bucket, the soaker bucket. I'm going to pop the top. I got just a little bit more in there. Just a little bit left in there. Then I'm going to take a clean rag, go down in the bottom, and then I'm going to just wipe that can. And, you know, a lot of the residual stuff ends up around this rim through mixing and that sort of thing. But I'm going to wipe that can nice and clean on the inside. Might as well just get the stuff that the brush didn't get, wipe that off. Then, for my next trick, I'm going to take this lid, not with the steel bristles, but the plastic ones. Just kind of give it a rim job. Just get that rim. You know, you can still see red from my freaking door. It wouldn't break my heart to get a new lid, because eventually it ends up in your finish to some degree. You probably can't see that, but there's like a little bit down there. I'm going to let that piss out. I'm going to take these off, the tips. Oh, I don't even know where you're looking. I'm going to take these tips off. Throw that in there. This is why it's good to have the wrench. You know, while you're putting all your parts together. That's on there pretty tight. You know, I don't put all of my weight into it, but I tighten that thing up pretty good. And I'm going to take that tip out. The minute it gets to a certain point, it's going to dump a little bit of the last bit of acetone out. Oh, it actually didn't. All right, then I'm going to hold my gun up like this and just go ring around the rosy. It's okay if you want to, you know, just finger the trigger a little bit. Hit the tip a little bit, do a little dance, make a little love, and this gun is clean tonight. There's other times where you can put a big batch with a larger bucket, take the can off of this, and put the whole gun, let that soak overnight. You don't have to do that every time, though. You'll go through a lot of acetone unnecessarily. This is how I do it. I've been doing this for the last couple years now. Old man Bruce taught me this trick, and I'll tell you what, it's quick, it's easy. You do the same thing every time. This will get you there. Everything that I've shown you. Now tomorrow, again, we'll go through some sanding stuff. Top coat, bada boom, bada bing. If there's a problem, we'll solve it, and we'll learn some more then. Remember how I thought 757 grams was going to be way too much? Just enough. All right. So, recap here. I squirted the backside of this and squirted again. I'm not going to flip this over. I now have the money side up. The side that's got the sealer, good enough for right now. I'm not going to sand it. I'm going to leave it alone. Now tomorrow, when I get ready to shoot this, what I'm going to do, and when I say shoot it, when I put the top coat on it, I'll flip it over. I'll put a top coat on that, flip it back over, money side up, and then grind this down. Everything gets, we call it denubbing, or just, sand the sanding sealer, and go from there. Now, dude, I almost forgot about this shelf. Holy crap. So there's the little white nub. Well, you know what? I'll show you guys. Let's get up close. There's the molar, the bugler. And you know what? I'm not really worried about it right now. That looks nice and crystal clear. I think that I'm just going to leave that alone. Don't touch it. It's a air quotes mistake because I burned through it. There's no way to know when you're going to do that. You just have to be cautious, and lo and behold, I got popped. I got popped like driving 56 in a 55 in Ohio. So that's how it turned out. I'm good with it, man. And just so you know, you can spray, at least I know that you can spray this catalyzed polyurethane over top of epoxy, which is awesome. Watch out for the scale. I'm surprised it didn't run away when it saw you.